Thanks for coming by,
really,
Ash.
I really don't have so much of a soapbox. Really, sometimes I tell people when they do why they should buy meat is it's just your same exact dollars going just a little bit further. So, like if you're going to spend $34 anyway, if you send just to CCP, then that's beneficial. If you send it to Amazon, that's not, you're spending the same amount of money, but it's not really going towards anything inside each. However, if you buy from me, you're spending the same exact money, but you know that I am going to also give back to the community. So in a way, you're spending this money, but you're paying forward a little bit into each. For example, is the Children of Light contest that Hydrostatic Podcast doing, and I've sponsored Declarations of War for several years. And I take care of other podcasts, and I send money to. Oh, I just went blank. I cannot believe it. The guy that does all the maps.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Dotland?
Yes, Dotland. I have sent him money several times because I really believe in how important that is for the players. And I really like him as a person. I've met him and talked with him a couple of times. And so if I have some extra money that month, then I'll send some of it to him because that is one of the best tools that EVE Online has. It helps the players the most. And, like I gave some money to Rick for his charity with playing video games and kind of thing. So I guess that's me tooting my own horn.
Well, again, thanks for coming on the show. Feel free to continue hanging out while we go through the rest of the meat of the show, and toot in if you wanted to add any more extra feedback. It's been a real treat having you on the show.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed being here. There's somebody asking about Plex in the chat.
Oh, I think we covered Durkadin's and Dirk McGurk's questions.
Okay, I can't read at the same time.
That's fine. And again, in the chat, feel free to put more questions, and we'll cover them at the end of the show. So, without further ado, go through this reasonably quickly. Let's talk about the trends that we cover every week. Starting, of course, with Plex. And I know I had said last week that I expected the price to flatten out around 840 million, and then I was promptly proven wrong, and we're now at 860 million. I think this might have a function to do with the 10-day the 10-day reactivation offers that went out should be coming due, and so there might be some extra demand coming from that. Also, again, the supply might not be as expected, since we haven't seen a Plex sale for Phoebe yet, but we might very soon. Again, I still want to say the same prediction I said last week, that the prices will stay reasonably flat where they are now. I'd like to see it back down at 840. I think it's still a little bit high. I think it's still a little bit out of range, but I don't think it's actually going to come down. And if we look at the very bottom graph, we can still see it's up above this blue line that does not show up very well on the thing, and I will fix that next week. That we're still in this overbought territory, and I think we'll be seeing it. I want to see it at 840. 840 is what my gut says. I will continue to be proven wrong, though, I'm sure. We already covered in the news, so let's go straight to outlier analysis. The first one I found rather interesting, just because it was the only one that flagged for higher volume sold, was high energy physics data cores. Looks like somebody bought out a bunch of them, and it looks like it's a speculative bump. I kind of expect it to stay above this 100,000 mark, so it might be a good chance to come in when it bounces. I kind of expect it to bounce off of where it is right now, dip down, and then come back up like right over 100,000. The signals say that it's a pretty strong growth, but I always am a little bit iffy on the MACD signals. The next one that has been a recurring theme has been the capacitor flux coil 2s. I had showcased these last week, and I should have added the extra line to show off where last week's predictions were. As I kind of expected it to level off, and then it did exactly the opposite of what I said it would do and continued to go down. With as much volume as being traded, though, I think this is undervalued, and this, I believe it's 800,000 line or 750-ish line is where the price is going to be the most stable. So if you can pick those up reasonably cheaply or build them, would be probably a better option. You could jump in on this particular undersell here and hopefully get it when it peaks back up again. The next one, just because the volumes were a lot higher than expected, were RAM Energy Tech. I don't like talking about RAM very much. It tends to be, it's kind of a weird product. All of Tech 2 is going to use what are their research and manufacturing is what it stands for. And the problem I have, and the reason I highlighted it and didn't just skip it from the list, was that there was this big dump in the price down under 250, and I think this is a huge adjustment down, and I didn't get a chance to check if it's still a profitable item, but if it has gone under its worth, you might want to be able to pick it up to have it snap back up to this 275 number. It's a really hard market to want to speculate in because they're a weird item to mess with, and a lot of people will build their own, and a lot of people are buying them. It's kind of a weird product, but this might be an opportunity. The next one, and I'm kind of on the fence about continuing to show off Moon products in these. If you guys like it or dislike it or even make any money off of it, I'd love to know. The signal for cadmium says it's a buy, and it's turning around. So I just thought I would go ahead and highlight it if you were interested in speculating. Make sure to check the buy and sell delta before you go in there. I don't have that handy on this chart, unfortunately. I don't know where the price could climb to. I think it's going to be driven by the new spikes in fuel costs, which we'll cover in a little bit. The next one is hafnium is also showing a buy signal, and again, I think this is going to be driven by the current isotope prices. So this might be a good chance to jump in and make a little bit of cash, but I would not hold on to this product for very long. As you can see, it sort of makes these big movements, but then it'll stay stable for a little bit and then move to a new normal. So I wouldn't try to speculate on this for too long, but the RSI is kind of telling me the price is a little artificially low. And Dirk McGurk, I can go send you that data. I believe this is the last one. Nope, the second to last. The other change worth noting is that it was announced on the forums a little bit late that the prices for electronics, engineering, and propulsion submodules were going to become more expensive because they were adding in a little bit more consumable. And feel free to check the show notes afterwards. I have I have them all in a special folder. It'll be up on the blog. But this is the sort of trend. This is indicative of the trend as we see a spike in the price once the announcement was made, with all that speculation, and then since demand didn't really pick it up, we see the slope back down to what the new cost of production is. There weren't many, there weren't like any items that did not flag this way. So if you're willing to keep speculating on it or building in it, that might be worth doing, but the trend has passed. And then the last one, and I don't have a great answer for this, but it was just such a weird thing that I couldn't not highlight it, is compressed glare crust suddenly became popular in the last couple of weeks before the patch, and so it's the best place to get heavy water, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why this is bouncing around. I sort of expect the price to go up, but I don't expect the trade volume to be very high. So this one was just bewildering. I put a call out on Twitter to see if anyone else knew what was going on, but I'm a little flabbergasted. And then on to my favorite minerals. We'll start with titanium again. As I said last week, I